Hi, Isabella. Welcome back. Thank you for joining me after our conversation on Let's Talk More on Monday. I am so pumped to jump into more of the intersectionality piece that we touched on during our first conversation. So thank you and welcome back.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, 100%. So we started talking about intersectionality as we were talking about realizing and understanding your white privilege.
Mhm.
I want to just pass the mic to you and jump in on it because, and I said this on our break, we are dynamic, complex people. And I know Indie Maven, they put dynamic in my brain, and that's the word I always think of when I think of who we are as people, because when it can be as simple as your career, and it's figuring out that you like a million different things.
Mm-hmm.
But in theory, you do one job for your whole life.
Right.
When we are dynamic, multi-passionate people in so many different ways. So I'm going to pass the mic to you for the start of this to jump into intersectionality, what that looks like, and maybe that moment of, oh man, I am multidimensional as you were going through this journey.
Yeah, definitely. So I think, and I love talking about intersectionality. It's so interesting because people are so interesting. I love sociology, but there are layers. There are so many layers to people. And I think, again, people are just like you can be afraid to say you don't know something. You're scared to kind of get into the layers, acknowledge the layers, but they are there. And even though they might not be on the forefront of your mind, or they might not always be visible. It's like there's so many different contributing factors to why a person is the person that they are. And then you're like that complex, and then you're talking to another person who's that complex, and you're all that complex. It's like this whole mind, my brain can't comprehend it. But yeah, so I've been out as a lesbian for a fairly long time. I've been with the same partner. But as I get, further in my career, it was something that was scary for me because I've never had to think about like in a work context, and it's such a silly thing, but I went to my first office party, and I was so stressed out about it, and it was so silly, and it was I wasn't scared about meetings or talking to a room of people, but I was oh my gosh, I have to make sure that I make a good impression at this office party, and I can't cook, so but my girlfriend can, so she made something for us, and there was these little mozzarella skewer thingies that I was trying to make, and then they just looked really ugly because I'm really bad at making things. And she was like, oh my God, let me do it. And she was like, oh, I'll just drop them off at work. And I was like, oh my God, you're amazing, thank you so much. And I work with an older crowd of people, and it wasn't something that I thought of at all because we're just such a diverse, that's something that's very important to, I think, Mason as a whole, but also just to where I work as a school employee. So I never really thought about it. And then I was worried when she was coming in, and I was oh, what do I say if someone asks me? Do I say and I kind of have tiptoed around the word partner, but then that just how we're trying to normalize pronouns not meaning that you're gender nonconforming. I try to I sign my emails with she, her, even though I'm cisgender, just so that that's not an outing in itself. But it's I feel just saying oh, my partner. And I feel people assume, okay, so it's not the standard thing automatically, but I don't want to say it right out. And obviously everybody there is great. And I've found out now after working there for a while that a lot of them are gay or, whatever, it's literally fine. Yeah. But I just remember being so stressed out. And that was something that I looked in on and then was wait, okay, no, this isn't the same experience, but this must be that kind of feeling, something adjacent. It's hard when I think in the queer community, there's so many layers. And, white people still find ways to center themselves there too. And it's not what I'm not advocating for that. Right. But I am saying that there's a bigger conversation to be had. And the non-existence of me not experiencing any discomfort really growing up. I was just kind of lucky enough to not really have to deal with it. I was also going to high school throughout COVID. So I didn't even go to I didn't have to tell anybody that I had a girlfriend. It was just not a thing. And I'm lucky enough to have supportive parents. So it just wasn't a big deal. But now that we're looking at townhouses together, we were going on our first apartment tour, and it was this huge big deal. And then I was I was worried that the landlord was going to look at us weird. And she's like a more masculine presenting woman. So it's like, it's pretty, we had a van just stop at us, and we were going and dropping the dog off. She has a dog. And we were dropping him off at the vet. And this man just stopped, and they're like, do you want to come to church with us? Like, it looks like you could benefit from going to church. And they were like all dressed up, and I think they were totally serious. And I think it like came from like a really weird like place of good, maybe, but it was also creepy because it was just a random car that set in a group of guys. But I was like, how do they know that I'm like, okay, well, I guess I have long hair and she has short hair and we have a dog. So I guess that's how people decide these things nowadays. That must mean we're lesbian. I don't know.
I think there's a lot to revisit there. That sounds very layered as well. The van.
True. But again, it was like,
thank you for not getting in that vehicle.